welcome to our Morning Throners podcast.
I'm Nelson.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Kyle.
And we're the fucking Morning Throners.
And welcome back to another episode of your favorite Song of Ice and Fire podcast. We are your Morning Throners with Tyrion 15 on deck. And I know if you're like me, the right side of the book is getting pretty light.
It is. Not many more to
If
go.
you're like me. Yes, there's many versions that I think this is the beginning in some versions, right?
I will say there are many versions, but I think Kyle's right that this is the end in all the versions. Like I think the third book is so long that in a lot of countries it's not published as one book. You have to get part one and part two. But this is not. I don't think that's the case for this anywhere, where this is the beginning of a book.
Do you ever see those crazy people that will like rip a giant book in half and read it?
It's psycho. You're a psycho.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, they'll like rip it because nobody wants to carry around a 700-page book, right? So they'll just rip it in half. It's like blasphemy and it ruins the book. And
there was nothing like tackling Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire with that big ass book. I mean, like 8 inches of book and then like 4 inches thick, and you're like, yeah. And then you get to the part where your hand is heavy on the left side. You know you've accomplished something pretty special.
That's the thing for me is when I'm reading an actual book, I hate the very beginning because the pages don't hold themselves down. You know what I mean? You got to use both hands.
Yeah.
But once you got to the middle, you can get that like single hand book hold, and you got the same problem when you start getting to the end though. You got to hold them both.
All right, Tyrion 15, Kyle. What do you got? What do you think? Thoughts? Chapter. Did you think he was dead?
No. I mean,
Plot armor.
Yeah, that. I mean, and the show armor, right? Like I kind of knew he was around at the end and stuff. So I feel like I had some outside help probably, but I still. I mean, he seemed pretty pivotal, and I mean, but so did like Lewin and stuff. But they weren't characters, you know. Point of view characters, but
the only POV to this point that's died is Ned.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. If you look at Tyrion, like in this book as a whole, and we're gonna do the podcast on like the book as a whole.
He was the Ned of this book.
Exactly, he was like the Ned of this book, the kind of like the guy running not necessarily running everything in King's Landing, but like in the middle of everything.
He obviously got the most chapters
in King's Landing, right?
Yeah, I mean Tyrion literally filled Ned's shoes. He took over his hand for Ned, basically.
I mean, 15 chapters, a lot of chapters.
And again, Ned was the one with the most chapters last book. Tyrion's the one with the most chapters this book.
Setting him up to die.
Even without the die, this reminds me of the chapter after Ned breaks his leg, right? That chapter, right. He wakes up and he has the weird dream and he's like feverish and he's like in and out of sleep a little bit. I don't think it's as bad as this one, but I think it reminds me of that.
So you're saying there's a chance?
I think it's on purpose, right? Tyrion is like kind of like Jeff said, like he's the Ned of this book.
It's a curveball.
Beyond that, I thought it was a cool way to kind of recap the end of the war. Like he's obviously in and out of like reality, but there's some consciousness, like actual thoughts in there, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it, but some of it seemed like it was actually happening.
Right. I think that's the big plot of the chapter is like, what is he actually seeing? You know, when was he dazed? When was he dreaming?
Yeah. And the other thing that I want to point out, we've said it before, so we won't hang on it too long, but like the whole, like the people who weren't in the war don't really realize what it was, right? We just had a chapter a few times ago of Sansa, who knew shit was bad, but her chapter was in the throne room and the heroes are being brought in and like we're hearing what everything great everyone did. And here Tyrion's like dreaming of ashes everywhere and like, oh my God, I can't believe I killed all these people. Like the reality of war versus like the stories of war, which is like the Sansa thing, right?
No, that's a good dichotomy. Is that the right word? Comparison.
I mean, we talked about it too, because like when Davos comes in the Sansa chapter before that one, he's like, oh, the banners. And we talked about it a little bit there. Like we just saw POVs of people in the war. It wasn't all the banners and it was so beautiful. It was horrible.
And then Tyrion saw literally just gray banners, right?
I think that's symbolic as well. Like it didn't matter what side you were on. You could die.
We're dead. Yeah.
All right, so he's my first note is he's kind of in and out of sleep, and his first kind of recollection is just kind of people moaning and kind of screaming in pain, and it makes you think he's kind of dreaming them, but I think that's actually, we learned later that he was in a room of just like all the wounded people. They had to kind of find him. Yeah,
it's weird, like especially towards the beginning, like the first half of the chapter, the whole chapter's like hit him in and out of dreams, but like you're saying, Jeff, like the first half, it's like, we know some of them aren't dreams, right? Like he says, like, "Oh, I saw Tywin. It must have been a dream because Tywin's not here." Well, we know Tywin's here. Like, was that a dream? Maybe, right? But
I don't think so.
We don't think it had to be. I think Jeff's right too. That like, hey, there's a cracked ceiling. Are we in like a what I thought was he was in like a common like hospital room where it's just like, okay, bring everyone injured into
For
this
sure.
room and
Yeah, it
and
was
then we'll
just-
divvy him out from there.
Well, I don't
But-
even know if it was that. It was just like the standard, like
Where can we put a bunch of
the
injured
war
people
hospital,
right now?
and then they said, "Oh shit, this is an important patient," and then took him to somewhere else.
Along those lines, like, how does Tyrion even make it to the general hospital? Right, he's got to be in fancy ass armor.
Pod?
He's a dwarf.
Right.
I mean, like, why
This
is he
is-
not taken to
how,
like the
how is he
highborn?
not?
You take him to the first
recognized
place
earlier?
available when your face is cut in half,
Yeah.
right?
I guess
Yeah.
to like to Nelson's point too. If Pod saved him, which we know, like Pod probably picked him up and like got him.
Again, Pod's a 12-year-old, so yes, Tyrion's small, but could Pod have carried
Sure, but
Tyrion himself?
isn't he going to kind of be like alongside him, like, hey, this is Tyrion Lannister, like we need to get him.
I mean,
here.
we also don't
But
know.
We don't
maybe
know.
Pod was injured too.
Maybe
right?
maybe Pod had to fight more people. We
Yeah.
have no clue. I mean, we
I'll
don't
say
know at this point.
you're right. We don't know anything. One thing we do know is he was on a bridge of ships that, like, I think Tyrion, it says in the last chapter, it was like moving, like it had broken free, and he was like drifting down the river in some capacity when that Pod stuff happened. So, like, yes, I agree, but like, is Pod in a situation to just like run and get somebody's help? Like, there's still, like you guys were saying, there's still a battle going on, and also we're like on a floating like piece of wood, basically. Like, it's probably not easy to just like get him into the castle at that point.
Sure. So,
But yeah.
all right, and then we get into like an actual dream part where he's seeing a gray sky. There's some ravens, some what do they call them? Carrions, basically vultures, right?
Carrion bird. Yeah, it's anything that eats dead, pretty much.
And this one was weird too, because I was like half wondering, like, is this a dream? Like, did he like somehow stand up on the battlefield and like wander around? But I'm thinking not. Like, there was a second or two where I was thinking that, but then like he goes into it for so long, and there's like he like talks to Silent Sisters.
I think it's like memory of. I think that's what it is. It's like reality intermixed with his poppy dreams. I'm trying to think of the word for that. Whereas, like, I mean, he probably faded in and out of consciousness, saw some of this stuff happening throughout like his run out to the boats and stuff. I'm sure he saw, people dead everywhere and all that, and birds and everything. So I think it's kind of, like I said, I thought it was a neat way to kind of describe the end of that fight. Like, because I think I think it's heavily reality, but it's maybe he wasn't doing these things.
Exactly. Like, there probably were Silent Sisters stripping the dead and like stacking the armor and
for
like
sure.
collecting that and like preparing the bodies and like all this stuff that he's describing probably was happening. It just, to me, doesn't seem like how could Tyrion have been in a state to be walking around and observing it. So yeah, I kind of took the same thing you did. He's probably on like the back of a cart and it, like being wheeled around and new injured people are thrown on, and every once in a while he wakes up and gets a glimpse and nods back off.
You guys don't think this was a dream?
I think it was half and half, right? Like he's getting like a lot of what he's describing had to be real. Like there were probably actually people collecting armor and preparing the dead. And,
Sure. I mean, but he's been around a battle before. You would think that.
I guess. I don't think he's walking around.
But he's
like,
talking about like the smoke
"Hey,
and the fire
crows,"
and I did this. This was all me. Like, and he felt remorseful too.
He did live through the fire. Like he's got mental images of what the fight was. Like
that's what I'm saying. I think that's what we're saying though. Is like he's piecing together his reality off of his experiences.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
I don't think he was being drugged through the car and was like half conscious. I think he was probably out. Like I don't know. I
think it's, maybe I'm wrong, but I took it as meant to be like, there's no answer to this. We don't like, we don't know if it's 100% a dream. Is he awake? In like, how awake is he? It's just like one of the things where it's like,
this is like the one part
really
of it
know.
where I was like, he's definitely asleep. Like he's up walking around. Like he's running to the gate at one point and the door's locked.
Yeah, like that stuff is definitely dreams, but a lot of the images that he's talking about in that dream, I'm assuming came from like
sure.
Kyle was saying,
I'm
like,
just saying, like
out.
he saw those images before he got attacked. He saw burning. He saw dead bodies.
We didn't see the banners and stuff. Like, and he was talking about like, the hearts.
I mean, there were still banners, maybe not the flowers, but when it was spinning around, he saw that stuff.
Before you get too deep into this, though, I think at least I'm agreeing with you. Like, I think maybe I'm not saying it the way that you're saying it, but it's kind of like, I don't think he's actively like experiencing these things. I think it's just kind of like, maybe this is what he saw in his last minutes before he actually went out, and now his brain's piecing it together, that kind of stuff. Like, I'm not trying to say that he's like awake and doing this.
And to your side, like he has that dream after he sees the cracked ceiling and everything. So if he is in the hospital room, which seems like the most likely,
Right.
then yeah, that dream is after the fact. And
Right.
I'm not saying that he was walking through. I'm saying that the dream is from like, he's like, you have dreams of stuff you remembered, right? Like you played in a football game and you have a dream of the football game.
You can also create a dream could be something that you've never experienced.
Exactly.
Too. So,
Exactly. I'm saying in this case, I think it's the prior, not the latter. I don't think it really matters though.
Sure. We're all right. So then he ends up awaking in a bed, right? And the curtains are closed around him. He's trying to move. He can't. He smells like shit because he shit himself.
He shits himself like 3 times here, right? Or every time he wakes up, he's just still in his shit.
One time he pissed himself scared, and this time I think he had already shit himself.
Yeah.
Upon awakening. But my first note after like him just being in excruciating pain and he can't move is that he thinks of the battle, right, and thinks of what was happening, and I probably pieces together from like what was going on in his dream.
Yep.
To this battle.
He's talking about how people are crying, like the voices of the dead. People are begging to end the pain. People are crying for their mothers. He thinks that he never knew his mother, but he wanted Shay. That's what I have for him thinking when everyone else is crying. He just wants Shay.
One other thing from the first dream was that he realizes he doesn't have a mouth, right? And that it's just skin sewed over his mouth.
Yep.
And that's kind of when he takes it's the first dream. It's when he takes the run at the castle, and then he realizes that he's locked out and whatnot. At one point, too, in the dream, he's looking out over the tourney ground and then the river, and he thinks, like, look what I did. This was my work type of thing. So
I think it was more of like a, fuck, this was my work. This is awful.
Like, why did I do this? Like, and he mentions, I remember there was a reason why I had to do this, but fuck, this looks awful.
It reminds me, again, just going back to the last Tyrion, one of the Tyrion chapters during the battle, there's a part like when the wildfire first goes off, right? When it cuts to Tyrion's chapter right after the Davos chapter, and he's thinking, like, he's like looking at all the burning people, and he's like, this is as much your fault as it is mine, Stannis. Like he's trying to share, like, pawn off some of the blame onto Stannis. He already feels guilty for all this destruction back then.
Yeah,
for sure.
So he's reflecting on the battle upon awakening, and a thought of Mandon comes across his mind.
Yeah, and that's when he pisses himself. And then I think he pisses himself back to sleep, right? He scares himself so bad, he pisses himself and he falls asleep. Well, this is interesting too, right? Here, again, he starts wishing that someone would come help him, and he thinks Shay, Jaime, Joanna, who's he said his mother, but his mom's name's Joanna, and then Tysha. So yeah.
And then...
No one heard, no one came. Alone in the dark, he fell back into piss-scented sleep. So, yeah.
But then he has these visitors that we know are all now back in. Like, he's not thinking that they're back, so he's like kind of constantly thinking it's a dream. Yeah. Tywin and Cersei visit him, and they're, I don't know. Tywin's like, what was the expression he had?
He said it had to be a dream since Tywin was 1,000 leagues away fighting Robb Stark in the west. Others came and went as well. Varys looked down, and Littlefinger made a quip. And then this is when he's like, there's no fucking way this is real, because Littlefinger never came back from Bitterbridge, the prick. Yeah. He's kind of out there on his own. He could hear, like, the people still. And this one is why I feel the way about the first one, Jeff, and not to bring that argument back up. But, like, he clearly thinks he's dreaming, but it's actually what's happening in the hospital, or in his hand's bed, I guess, here. But... you know what I'm saying? Like, I think he's like picking up the outside world.
Yeah,
still.
I mean, I don't know at this point now.
So is he?
There's a lot of uncertainty of where he was at what point.
Yeah, it's not important, but
yeah, this doesn't matter. But I was gonna ask: is he in his bed? Does he ever actually get taken to the Hands Chamber?
Yeah.
I took it as no.
I don't think he ever got back to the Hands Chamber.
He thinks he's in his own bed, but that's just because he's not in the room with the cracked ceiling anymore.
Right,
but the drapes are drawn. The drapes are drawn.
Right.
Yeah.
This was a feather bed, though, he said.
Well,
I thought the last place he was at had rushes.
Yeah, but right now, in this dream, he can only see the bed, right? Because like the drapes are closed, or like it's like one of those beds that has a curtain right around it, right? So he can't see what the room looks like. He can only see the bed. At this point, it's kind of how I took it.
In my mind, I didn't think he ever got there. I think he got put in a bed where he was.
Again, doesn't really matter, but
I think what if this is. So we didn't talk about timeline, but like, what if this is before the whole ceremony where Tywin becomes the Hand?
That's true.
So then it is still his bed.
Well, but we knew Tywin was there from the point that the battle happened. So even if the ceremony
like,
a few days later,
just go, "Yep, I'm in." Like, no,
I get what you're saying, but I would think so.
No,
I guess maybe not, because until you have the title, do you get to live in the Tower of the Hand until you're officially the Hand?
Come on, he's already held that title. He knew he was coming to be Hand. All right,
if it wasn't Tyrion
start
who
moving
was
his shit
out
up there, like I'm sleeping there.
if it wasn't Tyrion who he was kicking out, and like it was another like a different person, then maybe he's a little more tactful about it. But yeah, I think Tywin's like getting the fuck out.
He's not even conscious. Like, all right, like he might die. Like, get my shit up there a while.
I know, but I guess what I'm saying though is like, so he came from battle, went to that other thing, and then like they're like, okay, what do we do with him now? Once they figured out who he was, take him to his room. His room is the Tower of the Hand.
I think they were like, hey, let's take him to this room above the Queen's chambers.
If they ask, that's the thing. Is like, so they discover who he is in the hospital room, and they're like, hey, Cersei, what should we do with him? Right? Like, I don't think a servant is making the choice of where to put Tyrion. Like, oh, it's Tyrion. Let's go put him back in his room.
The maester or something, maybe. What?
Maybe.
I'm saying let's go ask the Queen where to put him, and she's probably not saying put him. Again, it doesn't matter.
All right.
Yeah.
It's
All
a
right,
short
so
chapter where
the last thought about what these visitors was like, I wonder if we won. And he kind of pieces it together that if he's alive and he's conscious, he had to have won. Or, I mean, he didn't have to have won. I guess they could have taken him capture.
I mean, he knows he was right.
Small.
He said my head would be on a spike.
I agree.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
And he's right. Yeah.
If they would have won, they would have taken over the whole city. So the Lannisters could pretty much fuck off at that point. So his head would have been on a spike. So then he wakes up and Pod's looking at him.
Yeah, boy Pod.
Pod runs off, gets the maester.
Tyrion's able to like actually move a little bit. This is the first time he's like woken up and he has like any energy where he's like awake for more than like 15 seconds, right? And he touches his mouth, right? And he's like, "Oh fuck, it's real. I don't have a mouth."
What the fuck's over my face? And it's crazy that like I guess they have plaster. Like they're pretty advanced in the medieval time that they probably figured out how to like paper mache a mask on this guy's face to keep it.
It has to look pretty like Hannibal Lecter-y, right? It's kind of how I'm seeing it.
Oh, I'm sure.
That mask is only the bottom half of his face, right? With slits in it for air.
What it said, it had holes for his nose and mouth, right? So
just holes for air, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty cool.
This time they did pull the curtains back, and he didn't say anything about the room, just for the record.
Okay, fair.
That doesn't confirm or deny. Just saying.
That is a point for your side, though.
So Pod gets the maester, and the maester like immediately poppies him.
Pretty much, yeah. He's like, "Oh fuck, he's awake."
He got poppied.
Which I mean is probably the best thing for him, right?
For sure.
Like,
yeah, I mean to the point of like the maester's mind, which if you're thinking of like a doctor, it's probably like let's get him under anesthesia so he doesn't fuck himself up.
Yeah,
by like picking at scars, picking at the wound, or
trying to talk or move his face, even
much.
like you know.
He has broken rib, like causing that more pain, and
he's not even thinking clearly yet. So like, I'm confused on like why he wants to stay awake. Like when you're sick, normally you're just like, "Fuck it, put me out. I'll just go back to bed." But like when you wake up and you're feeling okay, that's when you're like, "No, fuck that. I want to do my own thing." But
he's probably just so confused though. Like he doesn't even know. He probably doesn't even like. He feels the pain, but he's like, "Why the fuck am I in pain?" He hasn't even recalled it yet.
Yeah, but later on, it seems like the reason he doesn't want to be sedated again is because he's like suspicious that like someone's doing like is out to get him, right? So
yeah,
but I think he also has shit to do, and he's missing the end of the battle, you know, like all that part of it, like right, like
yeah, sure. But I guess my point is, at this point, he still doesn't know what the fuck's going on to the point where
he's not really fighting the milk of the poppy right now. He thinks he's getting water, and the guy sneaks some poppy in his drink. He gets slipped a roofie.
Well, he's mad about that then.
Yeah.
Does he?
Because he doesn't know, because he's confused, right?
He said too late he realized by the time the maester moved, he was already spiraling back to sleep. Like, it sounds like he's like, fuck.
Yeah.
And I think and we'll get there soon, and we probably don't have to talk about it again when we get there, when he realizes that he was there in the hospital, gets moved here because Cersei wanted to keep him close, and that his dad's already like everything that he had is now out of control. Like he had Cersei kind of in check. His dad wasn't here, so he was running the show. And now he has nothing. Yes. And he's bandaged up and he can't even move. He's like, fuck, if I don't get out of here, like I'm going to be, they might kill me. They might send somebody to kill me, which is why he asked for Bronn and his guards later on.
Yeah. It's kind of, again, without like as going big picture real quick, it's just kind of fun to look at like Tyrion's arc in like the first book was like, he gets captured, he's going to get shit on, and at the very end, like his last chapter, Tywin's like, "You're going to be hand," and it's like a huge come up for Tyrion right at the end. And this book is like, he's riding high, great, like he's in charge of everything. Last few chapters, you lost everything. Like you're not the hand, you don't even have a room anymore. Like you don't have a nose, everything's gone.
I can give him some nose.
Book 1 was his come up. Book 2 was his. Again, it's like not even like a gradual. It's just like total shift in the last chapter for Tyrion. Both books.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of cool.
Snap.
So in this Poppy dream, he dreams of a feast, and everybody's celebrating. He's kind of like the hero, and Jamie knights him at the end of it.
And there's a singer there. The singer who was with him on the way to the
Marillion.
Marillion.
Name
Don't remember
drop.
that guy. He's in my
So
notes,
then
though.
he wakes again, and he feels more pain in his face.
Well, before that though, he does kind of remember. Oh no, this is after he wakes. I'm sorry. He does kind of start to remember the Mandan thing, right? Like
Yes.
he starts repiecing back why he's here.
Right.
And he knows the God Pod saved him. He's like, "Where's that boy? I want him by me now."
Get Todd here.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh shit!" Pulls the curtains down. Realizes now he's not in the Tower of the Hand.
Yep.
And then I think maybe he gets hit in the head, or maybe he just exerts too much energy, and he falls back asleep. And he daydreams about a cottage and kissing some girl. A lot of kissing going on.
Yes, it's a cottage by the Sunset Sea, which is the sea on the west coast sea, which is weird. Like, I guess Tyrion's been there, right? Because he's from Castle Rock. It's where Castle Rock is on the west coast.
I mean, he probably
Yeah.
spent
It's like back home. I didn't really think about that when I was reading, but he's basically talking about like, a cottage, like a small cottage back home, because that's where he's from. Yeah, and it's the first whore. We know things didn't go well with her. Her exit last time. He married her, and then
little blondie.
remember how that goes, Kyle?
Yeah, he goes last. It's really the long and the short of it.
Yeah, that's the short of it. Yep.
Yeah.
So
They were
They hear,
married
though,
for a
they're
little
happy.
bit. They had a happy day, probably of marriage or so.
he just wants like a humble life. This kind of reminds me. I always say everything reminds me. This reminds me of like Danny. Like she says, like sometimes she remembers like the house with the red door, and she's like, oh, I'm walking through the red waste, or I'm in the middle of fucking Calazar, or whatever. And she's like, I just wish I was back in like a little girl, not dealing with that shit. The house with the red door. This is kind of like Tyrion. He's not remembering a place, but he's kind of just like, I wish I didn't have to deal with all this shit, and I could just be like a normal person with my lady.
Yep.
It's kind of what I'm getting from that. It's cute. She's like yelling, making fun of him for thinking they have servants and stuff like that. It's kind of like teenage flirting. It's kind of like high school flirting.
Definitely cringe. How did Nels? One, tell me your best flirt back then, and tell me the best way to flirt now. Let's give the viewers a little bit of a flirting lesson, really quick.
He's gonna cut this out, even if you force him to say
Everything I learned from Jeff. The way to flirt now is you go to Instagram and you scroll way back over a year at least, and you like a few photos, more than one. Because if it's one, it's like an accident. Like, oh, I was scrolling, stalking you, accidentally liked one. More than one, a while back, she knows you're looking at her. That's how you let a girl know.
That's flirting 101.
That sounds like an awful way to flirt. That's cringe. Let me say.
We'll ask the girls. It's worked for Nelson. It's worked for Nelson a couple
I don't
times.
think that's ever worked for me.
I will also say that I was been with the girl that's not my fiance before I gave Nelson this lesson in flirting. Not saying that I used it, but
Coaches don't play.
all right. So he wakes to a maester, and again the maester's like, "Oh, I need to give you milk. Like, you're gonna hurt yourself." And he's like, "Nope, not taking any more, and take this shit off my face." And the maester is like, "No, we can't do that. Like, it's not done healing. Blah blah blah." But he's like, "Nope, you're cutting the shit off."
Grips up the maester, almost chokes him out with his own necklace.
I would think that this is a little unrealistic. Like, how does Tyrion have the strength to do this? He's already fucked up, but it's like a twist, right? Like, it's like a twist. I feel like he could do that.
All you have to do is grab in one twist, and it's probably...
Yeah, you could. I feel like you could get that.
Yeah, and I don't know how much the Maester is going to, like... I mean, at some point, if you're going to die from this chain, like, you better fight back. The guy is wounded, but he's not obviously fighting back yet, and he's probably scared to fight back to Tywin, or to Tyrion.
What are you going to do? Hit him in the face? Like, right from this fucking scar?
Yeah,
like,
punch him in the
Give
rib.
him a little jab in the rib, yeah. That's what I would do with Kyle. So they start cutting it off, and then it has to get cleaned with wine, which burns him through
When
his
you guys
face.
talked about it too, but the whole time he's like, man, all it would take this guy is one false cut, and he could kill me right now. He's like, he's paranoid. They moved me. They're leaving me to die. Like, he doesn't actually kind of know what's happened yet.
Right.
But I mean,
is this Cersei's guy? Should I even trust this guy to do it right now?
So he's becoming more and more paranoid of everybody in his surrounding.
Yeah.
And for good reason.
And when he first says that, like, oh my god, one slip of the thing and like Cersei could have me killed, I'm thinking like, yeah, but it would be obvious. Like, oh, he went to bed with a broken rib and a slice through his neck and he got a slit throat is how he died.
But he did have, sure, he had a fever. Like, he could easily.
I'm not saying it's a bad idea to be suspicious. Like, they could easily do something to make Tyrion die and make
without
it look like an
slitting
accident.
his throat.
My thing is, slitting the throat isn't the thing.
I mean, or just cut open his wound again or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
exactly. Yeah. I'm not saying it's an unfounded like a thought. I'm just saying,
the last we heard of Lancel was Lancel had a fucking shoulder injury that got pushed a little bit by Cersei, and he might lose his arm now. So
yeah.
So the Maester cleans the wound. And he's like, "Wow, it actually looks like it's pretty good."
So hold on, read this, Kyle. You can read it. When he pours the boiling wine.
This is like to sting some, the maester warned as he wet a cloth with wine that smelled of crushed herbs. It did more than sting. It traced a line of fire all the way across Tyrion's face, then twisted a burning poker up his nose. His fingers clawed the bedclothes, and he sucked in his breath, but somehow he managed not to scream. The maester was clucking like an old hen. It would have been wiser to leave the mask in place until the flesh had knit, my lord. Still, it looks clean. Good, good. When we found you down in that cellar among the dead and dying, your wounds were filthy. One of your ribs was broken. Doubtless you can feel it. The blow of some mace, perhaps, or a fall. It's hard to say. And you took an arrow in the arm, there where it joins the shoulder. Showed signs of mortification, and for a time I feared you might lose the limb. But we treated it with boiling wine and maggots, and now it seems to be healing clean.
Yep. So that's basically like our description of Tyrion's injuries. Pretty banged up. He got a bum elbow in the Battle of Green Fork too. He took a mace to the elbow.
Yeah.
He hasn't talked about it recently, but he talked about it like for the first half of the book.
So you're saying book 3, he's just bitching about this stuff the entire time? Is that what you're trying to prepare me for?
I mean, he already bitches when he can walk that his legs cramp just from walking up and down stairs. So,
but then he was like running around the battlefield. He didn't really bitch about it too much. So
One, he was on a horse.
He was
on a horse.
He wasn't on a horse the whole time.
Good
until the ship.
Until the ship, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, the ship.
He got thrown off. He got thrown off his horse.
No, he jumps onto the ship and his horse breaks its legs, and he has to cut his own horse's neck.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's how Tyrion's horse.
I don't know if he jumps onto the ship, but I thought he got
the horse jumps
tossed
onto the ship, and he gets tossed off, and the horse breaks its legs.
Yeah. Okay. So then he's just kind of asking for information from the maester. So he finds out like what that guy's name is, which it's Maester Balabar.
Yep. First time I heard about this guy.
And he's like, all right, go get me a looking glass. He wants a mirror and he wants some wine. And he's like, oh, I don't know if you want to look at yourself. And he's like, all right, fuck it. I want to. Like, let's get this over with.
He chugs 2 glasses.
Yeah. Chugs 2 glasses and takes a peek.
Yeah.
I was confused as fuck why he wanted a telescope.
Yeah, I thought that too. I was like, what the fuck's he going to look at? Like, what's he looking out the window?
Or a magnifying glass. I was like, what?
All right, Jeff, you want to read that quote? What he sees?
He turned over the glass and did not know whether he ought to laugh or cry. The gash was long and crooked, starting a hair under his left eye and ending on the right side of his jaw. 3/4 of his nose was gone, and a chunk of his lip. Someone had sewn the torn flesh together with catgut, and their clumsy stitches were still in place across the seam of raw, red, half-healed flesh. Pretty, he croaked, flinging the glass aside.
Yep. So it's like here. No, this is not audio friendly. I'm pointing to my face right now. Or I'm gonna get the artist to redo Tyrion, redraw Tyrion. But I'm trying to figure out. I'm guessing it's like here, right? Like he said right under his left eye to his jaw.
Take Microsoft Paint and draw just a single line on Tyrion and show him like, here's where the scar is.
It's funny if you look at Tyrion over the seasons. Like he doesn't ever lose his nose, but his face is way more fucked up in like season 2. Like right when it happens, then
he like
season 8. He's walking around like there's no scar on his face.
Dinklage was probably like, I'm done with those prosthetics. Like
I don't want to be in this.
Everybody's forgot about it. Yeah,
they just had really good scar medication back in the day. Just rub a little milk with a poppy on it, the scar will go right away. Yeah,
some vitamin E, Neosporin.
All right,
so this is when everything, like how it happened.
Yeah.
At least the face comes back to him.
Mm-hmm. He remembers how Mandon cut him, and he remembers that Jaime told him that he was the most dangerous because of his dead eyes. You couldn't tell exactly how he was feeling, whether he was with you or not.
And at this point, I feel like we've heard this exact quote like 7 times.
Yeah.
Like every time
his dead eyes.
So
and then he was like, "Oh, the maester. I think it's gonna scar." Like,
Yeah.
no shit. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Tyrion also thinks to himself, like, God damn it, I knew Meryn and Boros and Osmond. I knew Cersei had them in their pocket, but I thought, like, some of these Kingsguard were honorable men. Like, I thought Mandan was just like, yeah, he's got dead eyes, but I thought he was, like, a good guy.
Maybe there's a chance he was a good knight.
Yeah.
And they were fighting side by side for a while,
Opportune moment.
Until he saw his opportunity.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
So then he's got some questions for the Maester again. First off, where the fuck am I? And we find out, again, he's above the Queen's ballroom. And he's like, oh, of course you put me close enough to her. And then he's like, why am I not in my room? It's because Tywin took over.
Yep.
How did we win? And we get the story again of Daddy coming to the rescue with the Tyrells.
The small folk say Renly's ghost, but wiser men know better. It was Tywin, Mace, and Peter Baelish. But again, there's no Littlefinger that any fighting.
And the Knight of Flowers, Loras, right? No,
Well, it's the two. I don't even know if was Mace even mentioned. I thought it was both sons.
Lord Tyrell. It says your father and Lord Tyrell with the Knight of Flowers.
So when the Maester's like, oh, gods be praised, these people saved us, Tyrion's like, God be praised, like jokingly. And again, what I never really caught this on any reads until this time, but like, is Tyrion like upset that he's not getting any
for
recognition?
Sure. The last dream, well, maybe not the last dream, but one of his dreams was, holy fuck,
He's the hero.
I'm having a party and it's in my name. I'm getting
Yeah.
knighted. Like this shit, like it's all worth it. Everything that's happening right now is going to be worth it, essentially. Yeah. And then here it is. Now my father, Littlefinger, and fucking these not strangers, but far off people are going to be lauded as the heroes. I'm going to be forgotten. I'm already pretty much forgotten in the top of this bedchamber above the, this hall. City's moved on. Right.
And he kept the walls at bay. Like without him doing what he did, they're losing. This
is 100% him.
The wall is falling, or a gate is falling.
Sure, but without Tywin and Mace Tyrell, they also lose. So
sure,
both people played a role, but they like
it's like a baseball game. Tyrion.
If it was just Tyrion, they would have lost.
And if it was just the other side, would they have won?
They probably just wouldn't have got there in time. Is the difference there?
Exactly.
Who knows?
They wouldn't.
So yeah, it's still a lose, but. I've always thought, like, I've always agreed kind of with what you guys are thinking, what Tyrion's thinking, but now that I'm actually thinking about it, I'm kind of in the process of, like, in the thought of, like, yes, in an ideal world, everyone would get equal praise for what they do, but it's not accomplished with either or the other, and, like, the way the world works is whoever's the one there when there's a reward to be got is the one who's going to get the reward.
Because you honor your wounded, you honor the fallen, like...
I guess you're right.
If there's record and there's witnesses, so this is my analogy, it's like a baseball game. Tyrion was the starting pitcher who went 6 innings, and then the bullpen had to come in and close out the game. So they had the lead when Tyrion left the game. All right, and
he got the win.
That's
what you're saying.
And he got the win.
If you're
Tywin got the save.
No, there's no. Is there a save?
It depends on how close the game was.
Yeah.
If it was, they were up 3-2. There was a save.
Okay.
I guess taking a step back and like going real world for a second, if you're in this situation, like being like doing like the thought that like what Tyrion's thinking is never going to do you any good. Like, oh, I deserve something that I'm not getting. Like, you know what I mean? Like the world isn't fair. You're going to be treated unfairly, and just like trying to die on that hill of, oh, I deserve something I didn't get is not going to win you any friends. Like, cool. It's better to be the guy who like is humble about it and like, oh, I saved the city and I don't need a gift. Like, yeah, inside. He's not saying anything about it, but like, I don't know.
He's not.
That's kind of my take on it. Is
literally almost gave his life for this cause.
I feel like I've been in situations in like at work where I did something and somebody else got credit for it, and it really pissed me off. And like, what are you gonna do about it? Like, let it go. Like, who cares? Like, you can't change
There's
it
nothing
anymore.
you can do about it because you're not going to change the people's mind by like, hey, I'm the actual one that did that. Like, no one. That story's already gone. That belief's already made.
I think it depends. I think if it's like you saved the company completely and like I think you would talk to your boss.
Is this like resentment? Is this like called like what Tyrion feel like again? Like he's not like
for sure.
I feel like that's something that I'm a very resentful person, and I like acknowledge that about myself. So like when I see Tyrion doing it, I like want to be like, don't. There's no point in it. I've been there.
I think we've all been there though. It's like a group project. You're in a group project. You're doing all the work, and then that kid gets the A too. It's like, what the fuck? Like, you didn't do shit. You got the same grade as me. Like, we've all been there in different ways and different levels of our life.
Yeah. So
So he's like, all right, get me Pod. Pod's the guy I can trust. He saved my life. I need
He's
him.
right though, right? Like, I mean,
he runs on the
especially
list.
If he hasn't been awake for we don't know how long, like he doesn't know what's happened. He doesn't know who's on whose side anymore. He only knows who saved him.
Yeah, the people he thinks of are Shay, Varys, Braun, and Bywater. And he decides, and then Pod. And Pod's the one that, which is, like I said earlier, Pod's a 12-year-old kid, which it kind of makes, like, he's probably the one that's not on anyone's side. You know what I mean? Like, he's not old enough to be
I think he's on
yet.
Tyrion's side.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, he's not old enough to be, like, playing the Game of Thrones yet. He's, like, a Sansa person. He's, like...
For sure.
Not necessarily, but, like, children in general are more...
Well,
naive,
I mean, he even gets sad that he killed Mandan. You know,
Yeah.
like, he doesn't realize he did essentially a good thing. And,
Yeah.
I mean, again, we're speaking from Tyrion's point of view here.
He
was a
saved
good thing.
Tyrion, but
Yeah.
he killed a knight of the Kingsguard. Like, whew. Like,
Well, think about, like, if Tyrion dies... If Tyrion doesn't live, which is... It seems very close, and someone sees what Pod did...
right.
Pod's fucked.
Exactly.
Like, that's Pod's life.
Yeah, Pod's like, well, he's his head on the spike for treason against the Kingsguard, for sure.
For sure, yeah,
He's
so-
probably been scared this whole time.
And we
someone's
know he's a
gonna,
little
like-
timid already. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny when the Maester is like, wait, you want the little boy, the odd boy, and Tyrion's like, yes, the odd boy. He's like, that's how they describe Pod. is
I
the
think
odd boy.
regardless, though, like, I think the chances of somebody having seen who it was and what happened in the heat of all that, they're on the boats out in the middle of the water, you know, like, I think he was pretty safe. Not that he wasn't freaking out about it.
Well, if somebody saw it, you'd probably just assume he was on Stannis' side. Like, oh, that's a guy on Stannis' side.
Yeah, that's what I'm
because he's
saying.
killing
Like,
the
that's
Kingsguard.
why he was safe. Like, nobody has any idea. He was nameless out there, essentially.
So he asked Pod to get him some dream wine, only made by Frecken, and you better watch his ass make it, and get me Bronn. And we find out Bronn's fate after the battle.
What's
Knighted.
different about Dream Wine and Poppy? Not to milk the Poppy, not to stretch us out too long.
I don't. It's Nelson question.
Poppy,
for
I
sure.
assume, is more like
Put you to sleep.
like
What's an opiate? I mean,
yeah, an
poppy
opiate.
seeds
Like
and all that is-
what's a drug is it anesthesia? An opiate? No.
No.
Like
I
there's
can't-
got to be a drug that
fuck.
people get that people abuse that's an opiate.
Yeah, like
something.
it
It starts with an O.
hydrocodone, oxycontin, like all those are
Oxycontin. Yeah,
all
yeah.
those are
I think
opiates.
it's
Yeah.
oxy.
Yeah, it's like Oxycontin.
Right, I think
This
hydrocodone
is what
I'm not
caused
sure.
has the country's fucking opiate crisis, right? Was the pain meds.
Yes.
But that's like Percocet. But like Percocets were part of that, and I don't think Percocets are opioids. But like
They
people got
probably
addicted to Percocet. But I don't know. I don't know. shit
I don't know.
about it.
I'm not educated.
But yeah,
enough
it's
on
like Oxycontin or some shit like that. And I guess Dream Wine is more like really strong NyQuil. It's kind of how I see
is
it.
oxycodone.
Oh, Percocet is oxycodone?
Oxycodone, it says.
Is oxycodone
Which is not
the same thing as
oxycontin,
oxycodone?
which is different than it. I don't know, man. Opioid pain.
probably good that we don't know
It
about
is
all
an
these
opioid
drugs.
pain reliever. Yeah. Yeah, obviously we're not pillheads. That's good news.
So we find out that Bronn was made a knight following the battle,
Yep.
and now Tyrion asked if Mandan's still alive. Like, is there any chance? Because I guess he stopped. Did he stop Pod from saying he actually killed him, or he just wants to
No, he
like?
says, I never meant to. And he
Yeah.
says, dead. You're certain he's dead? He said, yep, I watched him fucking drown, pretty much.
So I don't think Balabar's there
No, he got rid of him.
No.
Yeah. At this point. Yeah. And yep,
Yeah.
he says that.
So did you confirm that kill? Did you get the dog tags?
Pod confirms. Kill confirmed.
All right, say nothing of it anymore. Keep it between me and you. And he falls back asleep thinking of baby girl.
Taisha. And earlier he had said something about how she loved his face in the dream, and now here he's like, fuck, now I wonder if she'll like it.
Yeah.
Is she still alive? Well, as for that story, like they didn't kill her at the end of it, right? Like,
She walks away richer, I'm pretty sure. More
Yeah.
rich.
Yeah. Just a quick cool quote about Pod that's somewhere in there is, how can a boy be so bold in battle and so frightened in a sick room? That's when he like looks at Tyrion and looks
Right.
away or whatever, or just staring at his feet the whole time.
I mean, a little
Yeah.
bit to what we said. He might have been like scared of his life for killing a Kingsguardman until Tyrion
Yeah.
woke up and could protect him.
I mean, but he's kind of been like this the whole book, though.
I was gonna say, I think that's also like a real thing, right? Like, I mean, in the moment, like at least for me, it's like impossible to fathom, fighting somebody with a sword. But if it's like on your doorstep and you have to, like, I mean, it's probably a little easier than, standing in a room with somebody that's like all fucked up. And
yeah,
like
adrenaline takes over at some point, and you do things.
yeah,
you
and
never
like
think
now
you
here it
could.
is. Here's the reality that afterwards, like, The other time you're looking in the moment, and
Yeah.
I think it kind of makes sense, right? Like, plus hospitals, that kind of situation is always awkward.
Yeah. I think it just says more about Pod just being like kind of like you said,
12.
like he's the one of the guys that he'll come alive like when the adrenaline's up, but like most of the time he's like really nervous and anxious.
He's a gamer. He's a gamer.
A gamer. He'd be playing Call of Duty.
No, not a control gamer. He shows up. Maybe he's a little skittish during practice, but when the bright lights come on, he's ready to go. That's called a gamer, Nelson.
That's not what a gamer means anymore. Maybe in the 80s, that's what a gamer was.
Yeah, that's true. It's showing my age.
Yeah, when you grew up in the 80s.
Spoiler, that's the last Tyrion chapter of the book. Only 2 more chapters so far. Don't look ahead, Kyle. But yeah, should be 2 good ones.
Wow, that's crazy. 2 away.
I mean, I saw the next one's John. I mean, that's usually how we end these, right? We usually kind of...
Yep, we can do that. Next one's John.
It's literally where my bookmark is. I'm sorry. It's impossible to not. But, I mean, predictions here, I don't know. I mean, like, we've obviously established that Tyrion's, like, pissed about his situation. So I think he's going to try and leave King's Landing as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'd probably
like, if Tywin's going to stay. What's that?
I was going to say I would probably for more, but we're going to do we're probably going to do a podcast on, like, the whole book where we talk about each character's timeline and, like, what they do next. So we can cover a little bit of that then.
Sounds good. I mean, that was really all that came out of this chapter, right? It was Tyrion's all fucked up. I wonder about what's going on with Ashaya. Is that the one? Who's the one? Ashaya. That's Aliyah. That's what it was.
Yeah.
That Cersei had.
It's kind of fucked up that Tyrion didn't think about her at all in this chapter. Like,
I don't think that's really that fucked up though. Like that was such a
thought about Shay a lot.
Yeah, but that was like a 10-minute thing.
Shay's life wasn't in her hands.
Joffrey's been kind of, we know he was safe, right?
Joffrey's safe, but that doesn't mean Cersei held up her side of the deal.
Well, sure. I guess Tyrion doesn't know that either. Like, Tyrion wasn't even around when Joffrey got pulled back early.
I think he has to know that Joffrey's okay, though, right? Like, the implication of all this.
Yeah. You're right. On the whole, like, oh, I'm alive, we must have won. Joffrey's also alive. Yeah, falls in that category.
Well, and Cersei's not in here, and, Tywin's not in here, like, what did you do to your brother or your nephew?
Yeah.
Like, how could you let this happen? Like,
so what about that? I guess we can talk about that a little bit. What about the Cersei thing, right? He's very sus about Cersei, but we kind of pointed out. Like,
that's why I think he wants out of here. I don't think he can stick around.
But we mentioned it. Like, it seems like if Cersei wanted him dead, this would be a great...
Yeah, but he's the odd man out right now. And I feel like, at the very least, she's going to tell Dad about Aliyah, and, like, it's a different whore. But
she's got some bullets in her gun.
Did Tywin know what... Like, he said, don't take the whore to court. I think
he knew, right? He had Shay for a little bit then. In camp and stuff.
I don't know how long... Yeah, the chapter... Again, we can go back and...
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I'm pretty sure Tywin's words were, don't take the whore.
Yeah.
The whore.
Which I think he definitely knew who she was, I think.
He had one, yeah.
So.
Cool.
All right.
Well, we'll see Kyle in the next one for John 8. And we'll see the rest of you guys in the spoiler section for Tyrion 15.
Yeah.
All right, later, nerds.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Bye, Kyle. See you later. Thanks for hanging out with us. Now, on to the spoiler section of Tyrion 15. Nelson, what's your hot take?
Got a few in this chapter. First one.
Yeah, I got one that I know you're going to have, and I kind of want to steal it from you.
Go ahead.
It's the lyric for that song.
I think we've heard that verse before. The summer verse. I should check, though. What about when he chokes the maester with the chain?
Is that foreshadowing of him choking Shay with the chain?
It's how he kills Shay. I think it's got to be...
Hey, I know that I can choke somebody with a chain.
It's one of those things where it's like, I wonder if...
Maybe it's just a signature move.
Like, when George wrote this, did he know that that's how Tyrion was going to kill Shay? Or when he wrote, like, oh, I'm going to have Tyrion kill Shay, did he remember that Tyrion did this to Balabar and be like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if he did? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's one of the things, like, how do we know?
Or, like, what was, when he realizes that Shay's in the bed, like, what did he have at his resources to kill her?
Because I think, like, the first time I think we even hear about the hand of the king chain is in a few chapters ago where Tyrion comes back right after Cersei has captured Alayaya and Shay's in the bed with a chain on. I think that's the first time we hear about it. And then Tywin gets it put on him in the chamber in the
which is a big difference than the show because they use that hand pin.
Exactly.
For whatever reason. I don't know why they couldn't have a dope hand chain, but they went with a pin.
Yeah,
what does he choke her with?
The hand chain. She's wearing Tywin's hand chain.
It is in the show. It's an actual hand chain.
It's a chain. I don't know if it's a hand chain. I'm not sure. I thought you were asking in the books. I'm not sure how it is in the show.
No, I knew it was the hand chain in the books. I'm saying in the show, I knew it was a chain, obviously, but was it like a Lannister chain, or did they like make a hand chain for the show? I'm not sure.
I just remember that when he goes in, she's like, she's talking to Tywin, but she calls him the same thing she used to call you, like my giant of Lannister. Yeah.
All right, so we've already heard this line of the song. This wasn't like the.
Yeah, we've heard that one before. I love the maid as fair as summer with sunlight in her hair.
How about just him dreaming of Tysha a lot more than he dreams of Shay? That's kind of awkward.
So that's definitely a point, right? And like Kyle even touched on it a little bit. How like when he goes to bed, he's like, I wonder if she would like my fate, we have to see Tysha at some point, right? Like there has to be like something's gonna come more with Tysha. I mean, there's already a huge. I think so.
Is that your castle of dairy that we have to see Tysha?
I mean, I don't think we have to. I mean, I think the end of the Tysha story could be the Jaime reveal, right? Jaime reveals she wasn't a whore. She actually loved you. Your father had everyone rape this girl that actually loved you, and then you raped her, and then they sent her on her way, right? Like, there's actually a girl out there who loved you for you,
right?
And she got absolutely fucked over.
Yeah.
Like, there's theories that like one of the whores that Arya meets in Bravos, I think she's called the fisherman's wife or the sailor's wife. I haven't read it in a while, but it's something like that. Remember. And basically her thing is she makes everyone marry her before she'll fuck them. And she has like golden hair.
So you're saying maybe there's a Tysha nod?
I think people think it might be Tysha because when Tyrion says that's like how, and part of the reason I think we have to see Tysha or get something more about Tysha is when Tyrion kills Tywin, he says, where'd you send her? Or where's Tysha? And he's like, wherever whores go. Right. Tywin. This is what Tywin tells Tyrion. She is wherever whores go. That's when Tyrion kills him. And Tyrion thinks about this quote, wherever whores go, at least 50 times in the last
Where
book.
would that place actually be?
Like, wherever whores go, wherever whores go, wherever whores go. And where whores go? They go to brothels. That's where fucking whores go. And that's where Arya finds this lady. Again, I don't know if I buy this theory, but it's definitely the most interesting Tysha theory that I think's out there. And I don't have it on the top of my head for you guys right now, but I think there's a lot of cool Tysha stuff in this chapter for sure.
The only other thing that I have other than those two things was Bronn being made a knight. Because I don't remember how it really changes the dynamic between the two of them in the books. Does he stop relying on Bronn to be like his protection? And
so it kind of becomes important when basically he gets accused of Joffrey's murder, right? And he needs Bronn to help him with the mountain, and Bronn's no. And the reason, and it's not really the knight thing. I think Bronn stays on his side even though he's a knight. I think when Bronn really basically bails and takes Cersei's side is when Cersei gets him married to Lolly Stockworth.
Right. And he becomes
he's going to be the father to the bastard, and he's also now like a highborn because he's married to Lolly's, and he came from nothing. And he tells it's an awesome scene in the show. I think some of the best scenes, like literally probably top 3 scenes in the show for me.
Exactly what you're gonna say is like, you've asked me to die for you multiple times, and
just that whole scene, right? I think what I was gonna say is I think if you had to tell me like pick 3 out of the top or pick your top 10 scenes from Game of Thrones, I think 3 of the top 10 are Tyrion talking to people in the cells. Him talking to Jaime's awesome. Him talking to Oberyn is awesome when Oberyn tells him the story about like when he went to see Tyrion and he's like, I will be your champion. And him talking to Bronn is awesome because he's like, yeah, you're my friend and you never risked your life for me.
Yeah. It's good.
And Tyrion's like, you're a fucking dirty cutthroat. That's what I liked about you in the first place. Like, I can't blame you for doing what you're doing. Like it plays out kind of the same. But yeah, in the I guess in the show he's a knight at that point too. I don't know what. I guess it's the same. I guess in the show,
I think he might even be married to Lawless at that point too.
I think Cersei's giving him lollies for that.
Yeah.
And Tyrion, and he's like, you told me. What happens in the books is Bronn says, you told me if I was ever gonna Like if someone ever tried to sell me out, you double it. And Tyrion's like, what do you want? 2 castles and 2 wives? And he's like, one of each should be fine, but just better, basically better than what I got now. And Tyrion's like, I'm in a fucking jail cell. I'm in no position to give you castles and wives. And he's like, screw. That's what kind of screws him with Bronn. But yeah, I think that's cool.
Yeah. All right. What are your notes?
Just the one was just a touch on what I said earlier. The chain thing right before that, like the chain, him doing the Maester chain is 2 things we touched on already. Is right after the Tysha dream. So he wakes up from dreaming about Tysha, his like horror love, and then strangles the Maester. And
angry. He's angry.
I'm just saying, if you're trying to say foreshadowing for Shay, I think having those 2 things back together makes it even more Shay related. He's crazy paranoid about Cersei, and like we kind of talked about before, Cersei probably didn't do the man thing. It was, if anyone, it was probably Littlefinger. Like he is so paranoid that it's Cersei, and like we talked about, I even kind of gave it to Kyle. If Cersei wanted him dead, this is a perfect opportunity. Like literally, just give him a poison and pretend he died from his wounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Slip a little poison in after the poppy, and like,
So I think the fact that he isn't dead here, like, it implies that Cersei isn't trying to kill him because she has a golden opportunity and doesn't.
That's true. I didn't even think about that, but I am on board. Like, why not now? Like, what would stop you now from doing it? There's nothing stopping you.
Yeah. At least for readers, I think from a reader point of view, we can be fairly certain that unless Tyrion crosses a line again, right? Like Tyrion hasn't done anything to this point that makes Cersei want to kill him. Yes, she doesn't like him, but she's not literally trying to kill him at this point. So we have to wait till he crosses another line until she gets that type of motivation, which she definitely does at some point. And the line is the Joffrey death.
I'll throw another kind of just wrench into like would Cersei. Like there's another factor now in King's Landing that Tywin, like maybe she still wants to, but because Tywin's there, she wouldn't dare.
Or she could make it look like it was an accident for most people, but Tywin would be like, yo, Cersei.
Yeah, like he's our. We don't get much. We know Tywin doesn't really, I don't care for Tyrion, but to this point, he's been like, you're a Lannister, like you're gonna act like a Lannister, and you're gonna do Lannister type shit. So, the one thing, I didn't have this as a note, I'm just thinking about it as we go. Tyrion mentions that Tywin was frowning when they visited him. Like, it's just like the expression. I don't know if that's just, does he have resting bitch face and he was frowning, or like, is he actually worried he was going to die, or, what's going on with Tywin?
Yeah, I don't know about what he's thinking there, but my last note, and I wrote it down while we were talking in the non-spoiler, is a future quote that Tywin says to Tyrion. And it's literally the only Game of Thrones quote that I have in my office. And I just wrote it on a sticky note and I have it hanging from my computer monitor. And it's, mummers and monkeys don't require applause. And I said it in the non-spoiler. I feel like I have a big problem of feeling like I did that and you got credit for it type shit. And when Tyrion brings us up to Tywin, like, all I want is some bloody fucking gratitude. Like, you got knighted. Like, all these people got rewards. What did I get? And what Tywin says is, mummers and monkeys require applause. We're Lannisters. We do this shit because it betters our house, right? We're making things go forward. We're just making things happen. We don't do shit because we want a trophy. We do shit because we want to fucking save the city. Oh, boo-hoo, you didn't get a trophy? You fucking save the city. If you care more about getting the trophy afterwards than accomplishing what you did, then you're like, that's a bad.
Again, I think it's a great quote.
I love that take by Tywin. And it seems very negative, but I think you can take it as a really positive thing.
I think you can take that as like, okay, but it's good also advice, super easy to give that advice when you're the one getting the trophy and getting the honors and everything. Yes. Like, don't worry about you not getting it. I'll soak it up for us. We're doing this for us, right? But that's bullshit. Like, Tywin should be like, oh, thank you for all these honors, but let's not forget Tyrion was the one holding this thing together, and you can share the accolades.
It's also something you learn as an O lineman.
Absolutely. And
O linemen fucking make touchdowns happen sometimes.
And if you're a good teammate and you made a bunch of plays, you got to give a shout out to your offensive line, or you're a dickhead. You lose credibility.
But a wise man once told me the only way an offensive lineman makes a highlight reel is if you're the first one to celebrate in the end zone.
That's a good point.
That's why I got to hustle down the field after every play.
Well, you never know if they're going to fumble too. Scoop and score.
That's all I had.
All right.
And the last one was a spoiler. Just I couldn't mention the mummers and monkeys quote because I'm sure we're gonna have that conversation again, in a few months when we get to that chapter with Kyle.
Oh my god, a few months. It's crazy. All right.
See you guys in the next one.
See ya.
Bye bye.
Heroes roar.